Hey y'all, what's going on? This is your man Sabir Lehman. Welcome to the Wise View. In the background you have a song that's playing by the notorious B.I.G. called Suicidal Thoughts. I want you to check the lyrics out to the song.
Probably have me on some real strict shit. No sleeping all day, no getting my dick licked. Hanging with the goody goodies, lounging in paradise. Fuck that shit. I wanna tote guns and shoot dice. All my life I've been considered as the worst. Lying to my mother, even stealing out a purse. Crime after crime, from drugs to extortion. I know my mother wish she got a fucking abortion. She don't even love me like she did when I was younger. Sucking on her chest just to stop my fucking hunger. I wonder if I died with tears come to her eyes. Forgive me for my disrespect, forgive me for my lies. My baby mother's 8 months, her little sister's 2. Who's to blame for both of them? I swear to God I wanna just slip my wrist and end this bullshit. Throw the magnum to my head, threaten the bullshit. And squeeze until the bed's completely red. I'm glad I'm dead, a worthless fucking Buddha head. The stress is building up, I can't believe suicide's on my fucking mind. I wanna leave, I swear to God I feel like death is fucking calling me. But nah, you wouldn't understand.
Nigga, talk to me, please, man.
You see, it's kinda like the crack did the Pookie and New Jack, except when I cross over, it ain't coming back. Should I die on the train track like Rainbow and Big Street? People at the funerals frontin' like they miss me. My baby mama kissed me, but she glad I'm gone. She know me and her sister had something going on. I reached my peak, I can't speak. Call my nigga Cheek, tell him that my will is weak. I'm sick of bitches lying, I'm sick of bitches talking. Matter of fact, I'm sick of talking.
And again, welcome to the Wise View. Yeah, suicide. I can't say it enough, man, that we need to pay more attention to ourselves. We need to pay more attention to what's going on in our life. Because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people, millions, laying on their bed, laying on the floor of their living room, of their bathroom, in pain, in a fetal position, because they want the pain to stop. Whether it's physical pain, whether it's psychiatric pain, whether it's emotional pain, whatever the pain is, people want the pain to stop. But they're crying on the inside. They're not crying out for help in the way that we think they are. But there are a lot of people, man, who are crying out for help. And they're in that mindset where they're going to stop it, whatever way they can. Many are prolonging the inevitable. substance abuse, bad situation that they keep putting themselves in. Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with relationships. Whether they're relationships that have failed, relationships that were never developed, expectations from the other person, other persons, whether that person is a parent, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, Facebook friend, yeah. Social media is a great contributor. Because what happens is when you have people who can't have a real person, and I mean a physical being, who is legitimately involved with them. It can be a mentor. It can be a religious leader who they once trusted. And they've lost that trust. For whatever reason, they've lost the trust. And they shut down. And they isolate. And then they go to social media where they think they have all these friends. Then they find that they really have no friends there either. Now they're in that space where they're feeling hopeless, friendless, lonely, in dire straits, in disparity, desperate needs. And it's the things that we continue to overlook, that we continue to tell a person to just move on. And everybody can't just move on. And even some of those who are advising others to move on have not moved on in things in their own lives. They've just stuck things over and over and over again, and it's all compounded. And it's just a matter of time. If you've never listened to the song, because this is the first time I've listened to the song, Suicidal Thoughts. See, a lot of times when you listen to hip-hop, right, a lot of times we kind of skim over certain things that we think that we can't relate to. Because we tell ourselves, well, I don't have any suicidal thoughts. But when you look at the lyrics, because I posted the lyrics on Facebook as well, along with the title. And in the title, what I have in there is a suicide hotline. Yeah, because that's important. So when you see this video again, posted on Facebook, on my Wise View page, or my Daddy's Right Here Live page, or my Twitter feed, in any of those places, when you see those, I want you to see the hotline, because help is available. And a lot of times people don't think that there's help. They think there's no way out. They convince themselves that there's no way out. We've heard a lot over the last few weeks even about these school shooters and the mental health challenges that they have had, and how some of them have even been involved in the mental health system, the social services system. And they continue to find themselves without resolve. Yeah. It happens every day. Right now, somebody is sitting home. They're not necessarily sitting alone. They're probably sitting in a whole room full of people. A whole home full of people. But yet they feel like they're alone in this life. And they want to just throw the towel in. They just want to give up. Now, I've listened to the Ready to Die CD before. And for some reason, I just don't recall this particular song by Biggie. So again, the lyrics are posted along with this video. Go to the video yourself on YouTube. It's by the Notorious B.I.G. It's called Suicidal Thoughts. And in that song, he talked about like feeling like he was no good, being deemed as incorrigible. Mother didn't like him. His children's mother was not only pregnant with one child, but had another small child. And how he was responsible for bringing these children into this life. A life that he disliked so much about himself. And we keep taking it lightly, man. But I'm right this second, I'm talking to those of you out there who are struggling with living. Nothing in life is that bad that you want to take your own life. Nothing. Don't get caught up in religious preoccupation, because, you know, religion teaches that, you know, taking your life is forbidden, that God frowns upon that. Well, God frowns upon a lot of things. But this is part of the pain and suffering that some people endure as well, because they're stuck. And this causes even more difficulty in staying alive, because you have people around you who you think don't care. And then you're afraid to do it because you don't want to be sent to hell. Now, with all that going on in one person's mind, what do you think the end result is going to be for many who are going through exactly what you're going through? There's hope, but you have to talk about it. You have to realize that there are others who are going through the same thing right now, who have gone through the same thing and have came out on the other side with a different view of life. A different view of life. So I'm going to go to this article, right? And the article is from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And that is at AFSP.org. American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. AFSP.org. And we're talking about risk factors and warning signs. And listen, I keep saying that the Wise View is a 20 to 30 minute show, and I'm going to do my best to keep it down, but I'm going to also do my best to keep it real, people. Because this is about saving life. Your life. My life. Because when people commit suicide, right, and they're in your family or they're close to you, that greatly affects people. It's not just you seeing that that person took their life and you're dealing with the loss. But this, I forget her name, this world-renowned fashion designer, just yesterday, committed suicide. Successful life, from what we see, from what we have seen. So why would a person want to take their life when they're successful? So what that tells you is that it's not just about success, because successful people have committed suicide. We've heard many. This designer was also obsessed with Robin Williams' death, suicide. So let's talk about some of these risk factors, right? To the article. What leads to suicide? There's no single cause for suicide. Suicide most often occurs when stressors and health issues converge to create an experience of hopelessness and despair. Depression is the most common condition associated with suicide, and it is often undiagnosed or untreated. Conditions like depression, anxiety, and substance problems, especially when unaddressed, increase risk for suicide. Yet it's important to note that most people who actively manage their mental health conditions go on to engage in life. And I just got finished talking about this. And I've been talking about mental health awareness for the past, 5-6 weeks. I talked about it all throughout Mental Health Awareness Month. Anxiety and depression are the most prevalent conditions that go unaddressed, that go untreated by a professional. Many people are self-medicating. Either it's addiction to food, an addiction to their body shape, and trying to change their body shape because they've been body shamed for so long. their current living situations, their job situations, failed marriages, stressful relationships. And it talked about in the very second sentence, it said suicide most often occurs when stressors, the things I just defined as stressors. Now we have regular stress, but when all these stressors begin to kind of mount up, now we have health issues. And I talked the other day about how unresolved mental health conditions lead to medical conditions, ultimately changing the whole condition of the person, which means that their worldview has also been altered because all the stuff that they're dealing with medically and mentally. Medically and mentally. And it's like being at a JFK Stadium at a concert, and the gates open because the concert has ended, and all of these people start coming toward you. That's how medical and mental health conditions converge, as it says here, converge to create an experience of hopelessness and despair. Just imagine that for a minute, using that analogy. If you've ever seen, big concerts that happen at JFK Stadium, Michael Jackson concert, for instance, thousands of people, if not millions, that gate opens and all these people start coming out because the concert is over. I want you to look at all of those people as being mental health and medical health conditions coming at you at one time. You're stuck. You can't move. They're coming. You see them coming. And you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. And next thing you know, all of them have come upon you. They're trampling over you. They're walking or they're kicking you. They're pushing you. And you don't know which way to go. Because at this point, they're all around you, so you can't really see the pathway to freedom. That's what happens. That's exactly what happens. Anxiety and depression are key in here. Because when you don't deal with those two things, when we're just talking about anxiety and depression, we're talking about mood disorders. They change your whole condition, which adds to your thoughts. So now you go into thought disorder. You start thinking that life is full of despair. You start thinking that your life is just hopeless. There's no way out. And when we look around today, we look around in society as it is, especially for our young folks, when we've been marching as far as I can remember for jobs, equality, and justice, and here we are now, still fighting for the same thing. And you look all around you and you see abandoned homes where there were once families, there was once a community, there was once some kind of life, and you begin to see that as hopeless. You can't get a job. You go to school and you're getting shot in school. You can't even complete school. You're afraid to go to school, knowing that you need to go to school. You need to finish your education so you can at least have a shot at getting a job. And it's all just kind of fading away. And that's what life begins to feel like. Life is just fading away. You keep looking at the news and you hear it's another murder. It's another shooting. It's another stabbing. You start seeing family members around you. They're dying. And not necessarily related to violence, but they're dying off. People who you were once close to are no longer there. People you once trusted, you no longer trust. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And now you're enveloped in depression. You're enveloped in anxiety. Suicide warning signs. Something to look out for when concerned that a person may be suicidal is a change in behavior or the presence of entirely new behaviors. This is of sharpest concern if the new or changed behavior is related to a painful event, loss, or change. Excuse me. Most people who take their lives exhibit one or more warning signs, either through what they say or what they do. We'll talk about a couple of those things. So, what they say or what they do. So, one of the things that it has in its first column is talk. If a person talks about killing themselves, feeling hopeless, having no reason to live, being a burden to others. Biggie talked about that. He felt like he was a burden to his mother. Feeling trapped. I just got finished talking about being in a situation and it's like I'm stuck here. I'll never get out of this life. Unbearable pain. Unbearable pain. Somebody's always talking about the pain they're in. Trying to save a marriage, trying to save a relationship, trying to, just stay in it to win it and don't feel like there is going to be any win in this situation. And they get stuck and they don't make decisions that they need to make to get better. And then when they lose what it is they've been trying to hold on to, then life gets worse. It doesn't get better. You can't just keep letting it go and letting it go unaddressed and think it's going to automatically get better. And you can't really think that when it's gone, that life is going to be any better. And then you're going to beat yourself up even more because of the choice that you made to not do anything about it. Now that's one more thing that has been added on. So when people are talking about feeling hopeless, what does that sound like to you? Man, I've been out of job. I've been out of work for 6 months. Bills been piled up. My kids need to eat. I just don't see no way. Child support payments, are mounting up. I can't pay that back. Eventually I'm gonna get locked up for that. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. And whether it's self-imposed situations or not, it doesn't matter because right now I'm just trying to help you to see the signs. And the last thing anybody needs to hear you tell them is that when you put yourself in that situation. That's the last thing anybody needs to be told when they're feeling hopeless. And it's all good to tell somebody to pray, but you need to pray for them. Because a lot of times people stop praying. Because they don't believe anymore. Because they see their life hasn't changed. I've been praying. My life hasn't changed. And we always come up with these good Gucci responses because of the condition that we think we're in that's above or better than the condition that other person is in. But a lot of times we're feeling hopeless too about certain circumstances. We're feeling stuck too in certain circumstances and don't know what to do about it. And we continue to keep it to ourselves for fear of having that stigma attached to us that we have depression, we have anxiety, we have some kind of mental health disorder, and we don't want to hear that either. But the stigma itself that we tend to put upon people when they tell us these kind of things. Because people don't want you to be sympathetic when they're in that condition. They want you to be empathetic in that condition. You're not co-signing anything. You're empathizing with the fact that they feel hopeless because of all these things. Because now you have to begin to move them towards what is it they desire to have in their life to help them to feel hopeful again. To feel hopeful again. And the only resolve is to guide them towards getting professional help. Letting them know that they're not in this by themselves, that they're not alone, that you got their back for real. And don't just tell them that, be there for them. Have their back. But you have to encourage and motivate them toward getting some help, professional help. Yeah, sometimes it falls upon deaf ears. That doesn't mean you stop saying it. So that's the talk, the behavior that some display. Behaviors that may signal risk, especially if related to a painful event, loss, or change. And again, always go back to the relationships people are in. Because relationships, man, are a very problematic area for a person who has a lot of unresolved in their life. When a person has a lot of unresolved in their life, there are a lot of stuck points. They don't want to make a decision about this because they're afraid to do this, because if they do this, then they become vulnerable. A lot of people don't want to be vulnerable in relationships. They want to have full control over the situation. They don't want to relinquish any kind of control. And being in a relationship means that you have to compromise. You have to yield to some things. You have to work through some things. And relationships are not easy. They take work. But they take more work on you than the relationship takes. People need work, not the relationships. But oftentimes people confuse that. They think if the relationship is fixed that their lives are better. But you need to deal with you so you can fix you. Because you're entering into that relationship with all this stuff that you don't know what to do with. So it talks about here increased use of alcohol or drugs. Increased use. You have to be very clear on the increased. Because you have to see, man, you know, you used to get a 6-pack on Fridays and a 5th, and you seem to be cool. Now you hanging out down Charlie's spot. You coming in the house, you got 2 5ths. You're coming in with 2 6-packs. You're drunk all the time now. You wake up in the morning drunk. You go to bed at night drunk. You're smoking weed all the time. You're dropping all these pills. You're dropping 2, 3, 4 extra pills. You're taking pills and smoking. Yeah. You're going to the doctor more frequently, getting refills for that pain medication that you were supposed to be taking for your back. Now you're running right through them. You're sitting down watching the clock. You're supposed to take them every 6 hours. You're looking at the clock every hour. You're convincing yourself if I take one, 2 hours, early, it won't matter. You're doing all these things. Change. You got to look at this change. But all of a sudden they're telling themselves, because the mind is so powerful, it can manufacture additional pain. It can convince the person that they're in more pain. The person can be fearful. They can be filled with anxiety and feel like, that it's going to be worse. It's getting worse. They can tell themselves all of these things. And you can sit there all day long and say, well, ain't nothing changed about your condition, but you don't know what's going on in here. You don't know what's going on in here. So stop coming up with these bright ideas. Stop just blurting things out. Start encouraging people and moving people towards getting professional help. Another thing on this list is looking for a way to end their lives, such as searching online for methods. You should be tracking. You should be tracking that. You should be looking and see when you start seeing some flags. Some of the things I just talked about, some of the other things I'll be talking about. When you start seeing some of those things, you should be seeing what they're looking at online. You should be seeing what kind of settings they have on their internet, because if they have internet settings, whereas once they close out that app, their history clears, right? There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. You should be looking to see what people are looking at online when you start seeing these signs. Because people go online and start trying to find ways, because listen, people start, when you want the pain to stop, a lot of times you want to make sure you go, and you don't want to go in pain, well, beyond the pain that you're currently in. So people will find other things that they can take, other concoctions that they can take, like taking sleeping pills with, let's say, some NyQuil or something like that, because they don't want to feel the pain of them passing. They want to just like die in their sleep. None of us want to die, a violent death. But when people are trying to find a way out, they want to try to find what they deem as being a subtle way out. Going out is going out. But they start looking online and seeing all different kind of ways that they can just die, like either just like that instantaneously, or they can die in their sleep. It's all kind of ways, but what I'm saying is, what it's saying here is that people are looking for a way to end their lives. They're online searching for methods. Another bulleted item here is they start withdrawing from activities. They start withdrawing from activities. Things that they would usually be attending to, like family gatherings and things like that, they start showing up. That you would see them at the masjid on Fridays, you would see them at the church on Sunday, you would see them at the synagogue on Saturday, and all of a sudden their attendance starts falling back. They're just not there, you know, as much as they used to be. Y'all used to hang out on a regular basis, you know, and I'm tired, I really don't feel like it, you know, just not, you know, those kind of things. You start seeing them change. You stop seeing them at the Little League games. You know, you stop seeing them at the pickup, you know, a basketball game that y'all usually have on Saturday mornings, things of that nature. You start looking for those things. They stop, you know, being involved. Another thing it talks about on this list is isolating from family and friends. Isolating. They don't return your calls. You don't see them on social media that much anymore. Every now and then they may post something, but it's usually, you know, something sad. They probably repost something that they saw. And it all feeds right into, you know, their mindset of a failed relationship, of, you know, things not getting any better, you know, this life just being a living hell, things of that nature. So they'll repost a lot of things. So that's something else you want to be looking at too. But they're just not connecting with people anymore. And a lot of times people just think that, well, you know, he getting new, you know, he this and he that, or she this and she that, and they just get new. And you'll send them a message telling them that they're getting new instead of asking them, hey, are you okay? You'll send them a whole different message because now it's about you. Now it's about you because you're feeling some kind of way because you ain't hearing from them. Like, oh, you hanging with such and such. Ever since you start hanging with such and such, I don't hear from you no more. When you know such and such is not good news anyway. Right? But you won't like question like, are they okay? Sleeping too much or too little. You know, I talked about, you know, me with insomnia and how I manage that. Right? So sometimes I go through those periods where I don't sleep a lot. I'll sleep, you know, for an hour or two and wake up and be up for about an hour, but I just, you know, I've developed some skills over the years to deal with my anxiety. And then for those who sleep too much, you know, again, if you have anxiety, depression is its cousin. So I talked about, you know, my sleeping a lot, how, you know, I worked through that over the years and developed some skills, and I make myself get up. I make myself do things. I make myself be active. I don't let myself stay there. Even though my head feels like it's stuck in one of those, what is that Posturepedic, you know, that memory foam. I feel like my head sometimes is stuck in that foam. Right? But I make myself do things. I keep active. And as you see, I'm always active. I'm always doing things. Because that's one of the things that I need to do to keep myself going. But when people get to the point where they stop doing all these kind of things, when you stop seeing me actively involved, you know, in the film stuff, the book stuff, the weekly shows and things of that nature, give me a call. Don't just say, Sabir, stop doing the shows. Don't do that kind of stuff. Check on me. Holler at me. But you should be doing that with everybody. Everybody. And what happens is sometimes, you know, when people get into these modes, people forget all about them. They justify within themselves why they haven't talked to that person. And then they don't talk to that person. The next you know, they're watching the evening news and they see that person on and be like, damn, I should have, I wish I. Now you done added something to your repertoire of traumatic events. Visiting or calling people to say goodbye. Now you ain't seen little Frank in years. All of a sudden here he is. Hey, listen, I just, you know, wanted to come by, tell you I love you, and you know, and they start telling you all these good things, and they don't necessarily have to say the words goodbye, but their dialogue speaks to, alludes to, what's up? Are you moving? Are you relocating? You joined in the army? What's happening here? And then they give you this good hug and say, listen, you know, I love you, you know, but you won't be seeing me again. Right? Because a lot of times people are not going to just outright tell you, listen, I'm going to take my life. You know, when you heard the lyrics with the Notorious B.I.G. on Suicidal Thoughts, right? He was on the telephone. It was a telephone call. And dude was like, oh, yo, what are you talking about? What? Yo, Biggie, what? Oh, yo. And because he just, you know, he went on and on and on and on about, you know, all the things that were going on in his life. The other bullet item, giving away prized possessions. You know, when they give you that Lakers shirt from the championship, the last championship game, you know, where they got it at an auction and they giving it to you. They start giving away prized possessions, and it don't even have to be that big, but it can be something that you know they cherish, and they telling you can have it. And instead of you like going into, you feel so loved and wow, and you're so grateful that they thought of you to, you know, to give this to, you don't even think for a minute, yo, like, what's up? What's up? Because you don't even let anybody touch this thing. Now, hey, you want to give it away? I appreciate it, but why are you giving this to me? Instead of just taking it, listen, you know, if they're very adamant about giving it to us, I'm going to hold on to it for a minute, but we're going to stay in touch because something's going on with you. And make sure you stay in touch. Call them later on after they leave. You know, follow up. Because sometimes in certain situations, that's a red flag. That's the time to make that call. No, what's up? I'm not, listen, he just came over here and he just gave me, right, this item that he don't even let anybody touch. He used to keep it in the glass case, and he just came and gave it to him. Now I can't reach him. Can somebody go knock on his door? Or you go knock on the door? Because you might have to make a call. Listen, I hate to make this call, but I think that this person may be seeking to harm themselves. And they just left my house, and I know they went home. They sent me a text message and said they was home, and listen, do something, man. That's your John Q moment. Do something, John. Yeah, that's your time. Aggression. They start acting out aggressively. Cussing people out, argumentative, confrontational about everything, when they're typically not like that. Because that's the battle within. That's that battle of, shall I live or should I die? I got to go, y'all. Don't stop me. There's a lot of things that come along with that. Fatigue. Fatigue ties into, you know, with the sleeping a lot, but like when you just feel drained. You're just feeling drained all the time. I don't want to do nothing. Right? On this other list, because now it said this is the things that they taught. Because remember up here it said talked about, right? Then it said and things that they do. Now then the other part to it is their mood. People who are considering suicide often display one or more of the following moods: depression, anxiety, loss of interest, irritability, humiliation, shame, agitation, anger, relief, sudden improvement, mood. You got to start paying attention. Now this is not just you looking at other people, you know, this is also about you looking at yourself. Because they're red flags for you. So stop brushing them off like they're not important. Again, we were talking about, in this portion here, suicide warning signs. And I'm going to read that paragraph one more time. Something to look out for when concerned that a person may be suicidal is a change in behavior or the presence of entirely new behaviors. This is of sharpest concern if the new or changed behavior is related to a painful event, loss, or change. Painful. When people break up, that is a painful event. Stop telling people to just move on, find somebody else. It is not that easy. There was a time that this was a great relationship. A good relationship. It ended. There were things going on. People were fighting to keep that relationship, but they were fighting each other and they weren't finding any compromise. We always can look at death as being one of of loss. Who was that person to them? What role did that person have in their life? Change. Change is a real big one here. And I can tell you how someone very close to me was overwhelmed with an abundance of change all in one shot, and how they were affected by it. It was just totally overwhelming for them, to the point where they felt like they were losing control. Yeah, change is not an easy thing. It is not an easy thing. Everybody keep talking about how easy change is. It's not. It's not an easy thing. You listen, with me not smoking cigars, that's a challenge, man. That's a change, because when I stop doing this, then I got to put something in place to replace it. And that's why we go back and forth with stopping and starting and stopping, because it's a change. And sometimes it's easier to do nothing, or it's easier to go back to what's familiar. And sometimes when you have to make the change, you know you need to change, but you don't make the change. And when you factor anxiety and depression into that, it's even more of a challenge. Most people who take their lives exhibit one or more warning signs, either through what they say or what they do. And we just went over the list. The next thing I want to talk about on here are suicide risk factors. Risk factors are characteristics or conditions that increase the chance that a person may try to take their life. Health factors. Mental health conditions, and again, depression, substance use problems, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, personality traits of aggression, mood changes, and poor relationships, conduct disorder, anxiety disorders, serious physical health conditions including pain. Now let me finish that list. Traumatic brain injury. Now we can go back to Whitney Houston, Marilyn Monroe, Prince, and a whole list of folks. A whole list of folks who were on pain medication. Who were on pain medication. And it says it right here. Serious physical health conditions, including pain. You get tired of it. You get tired of hurting. Get sick of hurting, and you take that, and because remember we started off with the first paragraph talking about mental health conditions and medical health conditions converging. Remember I gave you the analogy of the gates opening when a concert ends at JFK, and looking at all of those people coming out, and you're stuck, you can't move, you know you need to get out the way. They all converge. Environmental factors. Access to lethal means, including firearms and drugs. And when we listen to Biggie's song, Suicidal Thoughts, right, what happened? You heard the gun go off at the end of it. And the other person on the other end of the phone was yelling out, "Yo, Biggie! Biggie! Yo, Biggie!" This is real stuff, man. So when you have firearms in the house, man, like firearms are like the most lethal of weapons that can be used. But again, a lot of times people aren't going that route, and they're trying to take a less painful route, because it's a terrible thing to take and put a gun in your damn mouth and live through it. To put a gun up under here and fire it and live through it. So a lot of times people want to take away that they know they're going to go completely out. If you've never seen anybody hanging, it's a terrible sight, man. I worked in a facility where one of the guys tried to hang himself. He was crying out for help because he didn't have himself at that high of a place, but he weighed enough that he knew that if he put it there, that he would be able to weigh himself down. And other people in the program were able to see him. We went in there, we were able to cut the thing down, and after he, was brought back to better physical health, because he had some mental health challenges, he was angry at the fact that we saved him. But it's a terrible thing to see somebody changing colors, man. And to go through that whole thing of coming through it after you get the because he used an extension cord. He had it doubled, tripled up and all that, man. It's a terrible thing. But access to lethal firearms, man, you have somebody in your house, or even you. If you feeling in that kind of condition, you need to get that firearm out of your house. If you know somebody's in that condition and they have a firearm in the house, you need to get them firearms. Hey, listen, you need to let them know, listen, I know you can probably use anything, but I just don't want this to be one of those anythings. Because that'll be the quickest route to grab it and use it. So, if you have somebody in your house, right, who's having some challenges, make sure you're securing that damn weapon. Not just putting it up higher, making sure you're putting gun lock on. A lot of folks got weapons in the house and ain't locking them. Because they don't think that makes sense to lock a firearm. Because I need to be able to get it. I ain't got time to get the key and all this other stuff. Yeah, okay, well, let somebody in the house who's going through it, knows that, and they go in there and grab it and they go ahead and use it. Then how you going to feel? That's part of gun ownership. Following the rules. Prolonged stress is the next thing on the list, such as harassment. Harassment, bullying, relationship problems, or unemployment. We're talking about environmental factors. And I talked about early on about these very things. People feel like you can't go to school because you got people getting shot in school. I can't get a job because I can't finish school. I'm stuck in this place where there's nothing but murder and mayhem all around me. No sense of community, no sense of family, no sense of living. Environmental conditions. You in a bad relationship and the child is in that environment. And all you and that other person is doing is arguing and fighting, or you got substance abuse, all kind of stuff going on in there. It's just a dysfunctional environment, and none of us are functional. But when you have an environment that is just filled with violence and hatred and rage and all kind of other dysfunctions in terms of nobody's in the house working. You got people who are in the house working who ain't making a contribution to the betterment of the home, and it's all kind of stuff. Y'all know the stuff I'm talking about. Some of y'all are living in those conditions, and some of y'all, not only are you living in those conditions yourself, but you got kids in those environments too. You know if it's weighing heavy on you, how you think it's weighing on the child? How you think it's weighing on the child? On the children? And then one passes it on to the next, and one passes it on to the next. Then you have this whole generational dysfunction. You see households like that, don't you? Yeah. Stressful life events like rejection, divorce, financial crisis, other life transitions or loss. Again, it talked about change in one of the other lists. Change is a difficult thing. When you go from having a household with two parents and the financial responsibilities and other responsibilities are shared, and then you get to a point where it's no longer shared, it's just you, that's change. That's change. That's a dramatic change. Everything changes. Everything that you once were able to do, you can't do anymore at the same capacity, not unless you were the sole breadwinner. But still, you don't have that person, and now loneliness creeps in. You can be alone, even with somebody there, but now loneliness starts creeping in. And you feel like you want to die. And you know, sometimes people look at divorce as being such an easy thing. I went through it. I've been through it enough times. And I don't care how many times you've been through it. Each one is different, and each one impacts you differently. And you got to remember, if you were divorced before, you're going to definitely feel the next one. Because again, you start rubber banding. You know, this went wrong, and here I am again. I'm too old to be going through this, or I ain't never been married, and here it is that we were getting ready to get married, and now we're not going to get married. How devastating that is. Or then when you get married, it's your first marriage, and you have this idea of how things are, and then you start facing the ideal of marriage, and you can't do it. You can't go through with it. You can't meet up to those expectations as prescribed, because ideal living is prescribed. It's what's written. Idea is what you think is going to be, and you have all these unrealistic expectations, and you set yourself up. But no matter how you got there, you're there now. And you need to find a way out of there. And I'm always going to go back to professional help. Professional help. Professional help. Stop going to your girlfriend. Stop going to your homeboy. Stop going to your religious leader. Stop going to those folks. You can go to them after you go get some professional direction. Then you can start integrating all of those things into, because now you have some skills, you have an understanding of what's going on with you. So when people give you these bright ass ideas about how to just move on, you can tell them, no, it ain't that simple. Moving on is the process. Now you start educating them on how to keep you healthy. Exposure to another person's suicide, and I talked a bit about that, or to graphic or sensationalized accounts of suicide. And again, I talked to you about the fashion designer, I can't forget her name, who just committed suicide, and how they talked about her obsession with Robin Williams, who too committed suicide. Right? So, exposure to another person's suicide. Historical factors. Previous suicide attempts. This is historical information on that person. Previous suicide attempts. If a person attempted suicide once, guaranteed, when things get heavy, right? Even at times with having had professional help, if they get back into that place again and they don't use the skills and the tools that they were given, they can be right back there again. Because for them, it's always an option. It's just not as frequent of an option now once they've had professional help, because they begin to make use of the tools to bring resolve to some of the things, to bring resolve to that particular thing they just got faced with. They can just lose somebody, and all of a sudden everything that they once knew can go out the window. Yeah, no pun intended. Family history of suicide. The individual that I told you about, who we were able to save, his family member committed suicide. If memory serves me correctly, another family member prior to that person within the same family had committed suicide. So that's historical stuff. Childhood abuse. Historical factors. Has someone experienced childhood abuse? Yeah. Neglect or trauma. All these historical factors. And when you look at trauma, don't rule out parental separation. Because you moved on from that other parent, as you convinced yourself you have. right? Doesn't mean that that child has. That's trauma. That's trauma. You don't think that I experienced trauma in these failed marriages? Absolutely. Because I worked my ass off in these marriages trying to keep them. Because marriage is for life. It's supposed to be for life. But it has to be shared. That thinking and that belief has to be shared. And when it's not, it's difficult. Because you find yourself working hard and trying to save the marriage, and it's still going down that rabbit hole rapidly. That's traumatizing. Because you love that person. But it's over. It just ain't working. It just ain't work. And that's why people vacillate between staying and going, staying and going, staying and going, staying and going. And they go back to it. How many times have you ended a relationship with somebody only to go back to that person? That's trauma. So, having said all of that, listen, I really want people to just like understand the significance of anxiety, depression, other mental health conditions. Having those things go unresolved can mount up, can converge, can go from a mood disorder to a medical condition, and so on and so forth. It doesn't get any better. You have to seek professional help. That's your only way. That's the only way. Professional help is the only way. You have to start bringing to resolve those things. You have to get those things managed. The way you're managing those things when you're heading in this direction, is not working. Taking your life is never the solution. It's never the solution. And we have to start taking a look at our conditions. Really do. And a lot of times we're just, it's nothing. And you think you moved on. And you haven't moved on. You're taking it with you into the next situation and the next and the next. And every time something happens, it worsens. And it just takes one thing. Like these volcanoes, you know, that are erupting. That's what we have walking around. A lot of volcanoes. And it's just a matter of time. And people just say over and over again, how can you be so successful and take your life? What could possibly be going on in your life? Well, that's the question. But it's also an answer in that. Because you see the need to be successful as a means to being better in life. You forget about all those other things because your only desire right now is to be successful. And a lot of people say, well, if I was successful like her, no way in the world I would take my life. Okay. How many times do you think maybe she said that before she became successful? How many times do you think she said that? Wow. She was living in that success. There was something far greater within that she desired. And I guess we'll never know what that was. People will come up with all kinds of stories, and we may hear some breaking news that it was such and such that happened, but it's an incident, or it's incidents, or it's unresolved things that have taken place that have transpired, and just enough was enough. Enough was enough. But listen, I thank all of you for tuning in. Thank you so much. Again, you can be doing anything else on a Wednesday night from 7 to 8 o'clock than listening to me. I really appreciate it. And don't forget, please, 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 go to the Wise View page, like, the page, ask other friends to like the page, because the Wise View and my other show, Daddy's Right Here Live, will only be seen on these pages.